Hey everyone, it's Mike from Foster DevOps, and today we're going to set up GitHub Integrations and SSO in Backstage. SSO, or single sign-on, is going to allow your users to log in to Backstage using their GitHub account, and they will then have that identity associated with them while they provision and look at the software catalog and templates. The integrations will allow for interacting with your GitHub, and as well as for the template provisioning, any tech docs associated with your code, as well as the software catalog. So before anything else, let's just get into the code. So I just have a terminal right now, a session in the Foster DevOps directory. We bootstrapped this directory in the previous video in the series, so if you want to look at how you get started with Backstage, you can look at that first video. But for right now, let's get into bootstrapping the GitHub provider. And first, we actually want to set up with a GitHub organization. So let me pull over a Chrome tab, and we're going to go to github.com. And let us create an organization. And we're going to do a free organization. So right now I'm just going through and creating an organization for GitHub. My robot? Two identical. Oh, okay. Two identical there. Alright, I'm not a robot. Good to know. And then complete setup. Okay. There's Authenticator app. And always have 2FA. This is 538.950. Verify. Okay, cool. So setting up a GitHub organization is as easy as that. It's good for including other programmers on your projects, as well as having a personal branding. So I decided to create Foster DevOps for this Backstage. So what we want to do to set up our Backstage SSO is go to Settings and go down to Developer Settings, OAuth Apps. We're going to register an application, and this is going to be local Backstage. And this is local because our homepage and our authorization callback URL are both going to be localhost. So this will be HTTP localhost 3000, and that's because our application runs on localhost 3000. I like to say local testing, local development of Backstage. And let's give the authorization callback URL, which is going to be from the backend. And for GitHub, it is /API/auth/GitHub/handler/frame. That's the GitHub OAuth callback URL for Backstage. Make sure you're using the backend for this call, and we can register this application. Now I have this client ID, and you want to save this client ID, and we're also going to generate a new client secret. So what you want to do with this client ID is, I like to store my secrets in Google Secret Manager, but what we can do is go to our Backstage directory and let's create a .env file, and we can do export GitHub. Let me see what I should name it. GitHub client ID, and we're going to export GitHub client secret, and this is going to be what I copied earlier, and this will be the secret I generate. So I am not going to show you generating a new secret. I'm going to pull this tab over, but all you need to do is go to Client Secrets and click on this button here. So let me drag this back over, and I guess you'll see it anyway when I edit this file. So I'll use this for right now, and then I will be deleting it after. So really this is just an OAuth app, so you can't log in, but I'm also going to generate a personal access token for my GitHub, which would be not the best. So I can, anyway, so now that we have those, we can source our .env, and now if I print env, you can see that I have my GitHub client secret and my GitHub client ID. So let me clear this. So now that I have those in my environment, we want to add to create the actual sign-in page. So you can do Command T, Control comma, Backstage deploy, and in here I'm going to check the version and then run Backstage. I'm going to go back to, now I can see it running, and let me pull that up for you. We can see we have our Backstage instance. We can go back and do nvim period, and we can set up our GitHub sign-in page. So right now you can also see I'm signed in as guest, and there's no authentication providers. It's really awesome with Backstage. You can just hit read more, but we're going to walk through this real quick. Go to the app config, and since I'm using Vim, I can do /auth. Yes, okay, providers. And so I just searched auth, and it's auth.providers, and then I'm going to add GitHub, and this is going to be development client ID is going to be our GitHub client ID, and we will have a client secret, and that is our GitHub client secret. So right now, these are environment variables, so I'm taking this GitHub client ID and GitHub client secret. I can add the $ brackets to make them be seen as environment variables. So it's pulling from the shell, where it's running, and it's adding those secrets. So now that we have that, we can add to the front end. So the front end is the app, and we can add to the app.tsx. So let's go down, and we're going to need to import two libraries for the sign-in page. First, we will need the sign-in page, and this is from the Backstage core. And then we also need the GitHub auth API ref, and this is from Backstage as well. Okay. And we want to go right to line 41, right after bootstrapping and importing those. We will add a component to the app, and that's going to be a sign-in page. And this is going to be from the Backstage core components, and we're just going to make an element within the sign-in page that will be we can just create the prop and add some of the description, and we can add GitHub as the provider. GitHub auth provider, and title GitHub, and message and then the API ref, we are referencing the actual Backstage API or library framework. And what's that? That's going to allow us to that's what will set up the SSO for us. So now that we have that, let's go down here, add a comma, and we want to get rid of that spacing. Okay, so that looks about right. I'm able to save that, and I should update the terminal automatically. So if I go Command 3, we can see Webpack compiled successfully, and now we have our sign-in using GitHub. And it looks like we have no auth provider registered for GitHub. Okay. I might need to, let me rerun, and we can debug a little bit. Sign in and API auth GitHub start. Let's see what this is saying. Figs under, okay. And starts to see more details. Okay. So it's saying there's an issue with the backend starting up. Missing client ID. Okay. So let's go back to the app config. It's saying I'm missing this client ID. So GitHub client ID, development. This is saying I'm missing auth.providers.github.development.client.id, and if I print env, I need to source my environment variables again, and now I can do a yarn dev, and it was just, since this is a different salt terminal session, it did not carry over the same secrets and environment I had in the first tab. So I needed to resource my environment variables. Now, I should close that. Looks like it's still not working. Print. There, client. Oh, GitHub. Huh. Alright, so let's go here. GitHub. And now we should be in luck. So, yeah, it's pretty important to not mess that up, but I can authorize foster DevOps, and even my profile picture comes up. So now I can see it's logged in for me, Michael Foster, from my GitHub. One thing you want to notice is my user entity is still default/guest. This is going to be talked about in future videos about your Backstage identity. But now I can log in. So let's refactor this a little bit to take out the sign-in provider, because we will be using multiple providers. So I'm going to create a new component called sign-in, and for right now we're going to go in there, and I am going to add a new file called providers.ts, and I am going to import. I'm going to grab the sign-in page and I'm going to add just the GitHub auth API ref import, and I'm going to migrate over the providers. So this is going to allow a list of providers to be created. This just gives us more organization with our code, and so I don't have to, so I have the ability to add as many as I want, because we're going to have Azure as well as Google in future videos. So sign in using GitHub and API ref GitHub auth API ref export. Let's change this to foster DevOps. Okay. And now we should go back here and change provider to a list of providers, which is going to just be providers. I might need to, yeah. And here, I will need, I actually don't need the dots. And here I can go import my providers from components / sign-in / providers .ts, and we can save that. Let's check on the web. Okay, it looks like the server is still running. Let's refresh. Cannot read properties of undefined ID. So let me go back here. Saved. Cannot read ID. GitHub auth provider. And that is right. So it looks successful, but it says cannot read undefined of ID. GitHub auth API ref ID const providers. That's the same. GitHub auth provider. Let's see. GitHub. And this should be right, but let's just take this out. That's not going to, yeah. Should be ID. That's a list of providers, API ref, message, title, GitHub, core plugin API. Okay. Providers. Should work. And it says providers. That's what I'm bringing in. And let's rename this to identity. This isn't going to be the solution, but I think identity is a better name. Identity. Identity providers. ID. Let's rerun the server and see. So I just reran the server, and that might help. No, it's still getting that same ID error. So let's do a yarn cache clean. Let's look. It says ID. Let's go here. Copy that. Let's add this. And save that. And then paste this import and see if this let's see if just putting it right in there should work, and then from there we should be able to find the true issue. I thought the cache clean would be quicker. And this is just testing if there's an issue going around, so I just copied and pasted, yeah. So there's an issue bringing it out of the, which there should not be. And we can do this though. Hit U. And let me import the GitHub auth API ref. And does that help? Oh, it says, and we shouldn't need that anyway. Auto provider equals providers. No, that doesn't do anything. It says ID, unless there's an issue with providers. Export providers to list of providers. It should be integrated well enough. Export const providers, GitHub auth provider, and I copied it right into the actual provider, so I'm a little thrown off. But you know what, I might be able to say it shouldn't need to be a list. This is, hopefully I'll cut this, and if not, you get to see some of the debugging. This is auto provider, which is so strange with this SSO. I've been looking into ways of using testing with SSO, but Backstage ships with Jest. It's a TypeScript for component testing, and it doesn't do the best job at testing for SSO. And another tool I like is Cypress. It doesn't do a great job either for SSO. There is a way to do it though, so let's see. Providers. ID. It's complaining about this ID. That should have broken something, right? Yeah. So if I don't have the ID, it should break it. Let's see what's happening. It says success. Saying unable to read ID. And what's really strange is if I copy this and this makes the app run, right? Right when I take it out, I think it might be complaining because of this. Let's see. So it was complaining that it was a list, which is strange because you should be able to send in a list. Anyway, so I will definitely look back into this. You should be able to have a list of providers. So anyway, we've refactored that and it should work now. So that was the SSO. Straightforward. We did a little bit of a refactor. Shouldn't be too tough. So now let's do some integrations so we can see some provisioning with the template. And for this, I'm going to just use the my personal access token. In a later video, we'll show how to use your I will show how to use an organization application, OAuth app, GitHub app to do your GitHub integrations as well as Azure DevOps. But for now, let's just do local Backstage, and this is going to be the length of this video. So I'm going to show the creation, and I will show 8/12. It will expire, and you need repo and workflow. I'm also going to include write and delete packages, not an admin org. But I could give read and write for the org. Let's see. Okay. So that's all I really need. I'm going to generate that token, and I'm going to create a value in my .env. So let's go back here. I'm going to make a new shell and just create this dot. Actually, I'm going to stop my server and create a new GitHub token, create a new environment variable, and that will be my GitHub token. And then I'm going to source my .env. And what's really nice about the GitHub integration is in the app-config.yaml, they already have this set up. So what I can do is go to, so since it's already set up, we can save this, go to my other shell, and I sourced my .env, so I can do a yarn dev, and now I should be able to see so nothing new, but I can register a new template, and I will call this foster DevOps test, and I will name myself as the owner, and then this has to be a unique repository name for this template because you're going to be creating a new repository. So I'll do test foster DevOps, and I will want to create this. It'll go through some steps, and now it's in my catalog through that register step. I can view it here. This Backstage identity created it, which is just me. And we can talk about how to populate this page differently. I can view the source, and this is what it all created. Package.json, a quick hello world, and the catalog.info. And this is sort of how you define the other page. So we'll get into that later. But yeah, so you can see it populates now in my owned, and we can see all. So that was now how you have your GitHub integrations as well as your GitHub SSO. So thank you for tuning in, and yeah, I hope you learned something. I know we hit a snag, but let's continue on. Next, I'll be doing Azure DevOps and Azure Active Directory sign-in and integrations, and that will be for another SSO provider that Backstage doesn't have as good of documentation on, but all of the necessary links I'll have below, as well as the link to generating your new personal access token. So yeah, I hope you all learned something. All right, bye.